In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to restore a project that's been corrupted by xCode. So to explain a little bit what I mean by corrupted, this project is a fully functional project that can build. It has multiple schemes, and each one of these schemes will generate an app, and the apps will run. And here is one of the apps actually executing successfully. And I can go in here and create projects in the Project Organizer app, and I can open up those projects. I can look at the notes. I can see the advertisements are working. I can go in here and type data into these pages, and it gets recorded successfully. This app is fully functional. However, what happened recently is I was converting certain parts of the application to Swift, getting rid of some deprecated code, and in the process I added some files to the project. And the way you add files to the project is you go up here to the top. You have to position your cursor inside of the directory. You do add files to project, and you use this tool. It seems innocuous enough, shouldn't be a problem. However, I don't know if this is well publicized, but according to what I've read online, if you should happen to add the directory that represents the main application, so in this case there's a lot of different directories, this directory right here, status report 4, if I add that directory to the project, and I don't know if it has to exist or not, but there's a defect inside of xCode that it will recursively add the files to the project, and then it'll create a subdirectory under that directory, recreate the directory, and then recreate all the files inside that directory, and then create a directory inside of that directory, and recursively add all the files to that directory, and recursively just add them to the subdirectories. Now, one fix that they recommend on the internet, which I tried, is that you can go to the file system. So I'll go to the file system, I'll go into the project itself here, and you go to the first level. So here's the directory, and then here's the subdirectory that got added. You can delete this directory, and then it'll delete all the subdirectories underneath that, and then your project will be fine, and you'll just have one copy of all the files, and life will be wonderful. I tried that. Project would not build, and as you can see, it is running successfully right now in the simulator right here. However, once you do that, it will not build. And instead of deleting it, just to demonstrate that, I'm going to rename the project right here. I'm going to rename that directory status report 4. That's going to simulate it being deleted, and I'll demonstrate that it won't build. And to demonstrate the issue of the recursive projects, it just keeps creating directories under that directory, and then copying all of your source files into the subdirectory, and then it creates a directory under that directory, and then copies all the source files, and then keeps going. They refer to it as infinity, but if you actually dig into it, for me it went 59 levels. So it's just creating a lot of wasted space on your computer, eating up the hard disk, and tying up resources that could otherwise be useful. Also, if you go to back up the projects, as soon as this happened, I went to do a git check-in, and it said 6,192 files added to the project. And then immediately I knew I don't want to do a check-in here, because I changed maybe, usually I have a check-in, it'll be like 3 files to maybe 63 files roughly, but 6,192 files, definitely in a bad situation here. And so just to demonstrate, so you can see it's really deep, and it just goes on. Trust me, it's 59 levels deep, and it's a real mess. So I think it would be quite easy if I had the source code for xCode to fix it. They could just put a guard around the code that if the name of the project matches the name of the subdirectory that you're adding to the project, then just don't do it, because nothing good can come from this. Like 9 times this has corrupted my project, and it's one of the reasons I don't do xCode full time, because I'd rather work in better tools. So this is the tool running. Let me quit this, and then I'll demonstrate a build after I've renamed that directory. So I'll stop that, and then I'll start the build again. And as you can see, it's going to error out, and it's going to produce a lot of errors. And as you can see here, it's saying that there's errors related to files not being available, not visible, that kind of thing. So right here, this is a file. So this is project status pro bridge header. So normally that file would be like under status report 4. But as you can see, it's under status report 4, status report 4, status report 4, another time, and it goes many levels deep here. And I don't know, I haven't counted this out, but it probably looks like it's 59 levels deep. So what I would want to do is take that file and map it back to the file that it was supposed to be mapped to. So the way you do that is you go to the home, and I'm going to look for that file, status report 4. Okay, it should be under status report 4 directory right here. Okay, here it is. And then it was the bridge header file. Okay, here it is. So this file. And it looks innocuous enough over here. It's got just the references to it, and then it has the directory, and it just shows that it's 2 levels deep, but it shouldn't even be 2 levels deep, it should just be 1 level deep. So the way I'm going to fix that is I click here, and then let me figure out where I am. Okay, I want to go down 1 level. Actually, I'll just go to the root right here, and then I'll go up 1 level. And then I'll search for that file. Hopefully it's still here. Okay, so it's not at this level, so I think it's at the next level. So let me look for status report 4 in here. Go down 1 level, and look for the bridge header. And this, I believe, is the file. Choose that file, and that should have corrected that 1 file. So let's look at this one. Yeah, it looks roughly correct. Now let's click on this button here to see where it is mapped on the file system. Okay, that looks good. I've fixed 1 file. 341 files to go. Okay, so next one will be Project Organizer Pro. You got to remember what you're working on. And search for that file. Right here. Choose that file. Okay, let's see if that's mapped correctly now. That one looks good. Okay, good. Okay, now I go to the next one. And I add with names the non-pro version, bridging header, choose that. And I'll go to the file system, verify that it is mapped correctly. 1 level, 2 levels. Okay. Ideally, I'd want to get all these headers down into the place where they originally were. But 2 levels deep is okay. 59 levels, not good. Okay. So then the next one's good with names. I think by now you've probably got the general idea. Basically, you have to find all the files that are going to give you a compiler error, are giving you issues of any type, and work through those files one at a time and remap them to the correct location, and then verify that they are in fact linked to the correct file in the file system. And then after that's all complete and you got a successful build, then you could delete this directory that I renamed and have assurance that you're not losing your source code. And if you're able to build your app and run it and have it run successfully, you should be good to go. So let's look at the build errors here. So here's one. Okay, so it's saying there's multiple declarations of this file. So obviously there's 59 copies of it, so that could be an issue. So I want to remap that one, and then it's saying there's a bunch of errors that come up as far as the file doesn't exist as well. Those are the ones that I'm really focused on. And I think if I do a product clean, that'll wipe out all the build source code already. And then I'll really see the errors occur here. And then I do a product build. And then you could start to see already the missing files here. So obviously this data model's got to be fixed. The project status info plist, the project organizer master controller add, the basically 350 or more files here. There's 4,800 issues here. Just work through the files one at a time, fixing them. But it would be really nice if Apple could just actually fix this bug. This has happened to me like 9 times already, and it's starting to get old. And I'd rather just be writing code and getting an app, develop new features and fixing defects and getting a product ready for market and not have to deal with problems with the tool itself. But I think I've showed you enough in here on how to fix it, and believe anybody would want to actually watch me do 348 files and fix 35 schemas manually. But that's essentially what I need to do to get this working again. Maybe I'll add a trailer to this if it's successful. I worked into the evening, basically until I fell asleep, mapping the files on the file system to the directory that was not multiple levels deep. And I tried a build this morning on the project, and it came up with one severe error, and then a bunch of other innocuous error. Even though I resolve one error, it's still not going to completely build. So I was looking at these errors, and I had at the time about 165 issues, which you can still see here. But those are mostly warnings with auto layouts and that kind of thing. What I'm more concerned about is the errors that have to do with references to files that don't exist. So if I hover over any one of these errors here, you can see, if I actually hover over this error, you can see that it is a reference to a file that is many, many, many levels deep into the file system, and it can't find it. So something is holding on to a reference to all of these files, and there's more than 300 files here, and at least 59 copies of them. So that's obviously causing about 5,000 errors, which makes a lot of sense. So I want to get rid of the references to these files. And I was digging through the documentation, and I've got a workspace and I've got a project in the workspace, and there's schemas that generate multiple apps. So where are the references to these files? And from what I've read in the Apple documentation, the references to the files are in the project files. So what I'm going to try doing is compiling this as a single project, not the workspace, and then check out the number of errors. But the workspace contains multiple projects, so that would make some sense why if I search for a particular file here, I'll see many, many different references to a single file inside of one workspace. So my thinking is I need to clean up the workspace. I tried looking through the raw files, and the raw files didn't contain references to the file names. The documentation says that those are in the project files. So my issue is that my workspace now contains multiple projects, multiple layers deep through the 59 layers of recursive directories that were created when xCode corrupted this project. So my workspace is auto-generated, so I do that with my pods build. So I'm going to check out my pods file, make sure it's here. It's usually in my pods directory. And I'll do a pods build from the pod file and recreate my all my pods, and that should recreate my workspace. So this is my pods, pod file, which dictates my build. It puts in my dependencies, and then it creates targets with those dependencies recursively in a loop. So I'm going to regenerate that on the command line, and then I'll come back and see if this build has less errors at that point. When my project got corrupted and I was compiling it, I got this error at one point, and I wanted to do a short video on how to fix it. It's XML-free doc, and I had to Google this because I did it back in 2013 and forgot about how it worked in my app. So it's an XML file, it's imported, it's an external library. So if you have an external library and it's missing, you just have to go through these steps. So what you do is you go into the, so you pick your target. So you have to open up your project and then go to your targets. Pick the particular target, go to the build phases section, go down to the binary link libraries, and you'll notice that it's missing well, it's not obvious, but it's missing a library here. It was previously there, but it got deleted when the project got corrupted. So to re-add it, you have to load it off the file system of the operating system. So you go to the plus screen here, but it's not listed here. It's an external library, so you have to click on Add Others. And then you have to know this sequence of keystrokes. It's Command, Shift, and a G. That opens up a little window, and you type /usr/lib, click Go, and that will bring up a list of all the libraries here. Now they're in alphabetical order, and I'm looking for the libxml. So it's down here near the bottom, and it's libxml2, and this one will do right here. So click OK on that, and after adding that to my project, it should get rid of that error I was showing at the beginning of the screen. Got to reconnect to my device here, and see if I can build successfully. Product build. See if we can link successfully. It was getting a link failure. So if your project gets corrupted by the add files to project bug in xCode and you lose access to your external link libraries, that's how you re-add it. Looks like I have another defect to work through here. Not surprising, I've been doing this for 3 days. Okay, yeah, I'll work through these on a separate video. Okay, so I ran the command, as you can see in this terminal window, pod install, and at first it did generate the updated workspace as I had expected it to do. However, I did discover that the file that was generated was created in 2013 and was updated. So what I did was I renamed that file to the same name with corrupted at the end, and then I reran the pod install command, and that generated a new workspace file which was created today from scratch, not updated. So when I loaded the first file, the corrupted one, it still had the 5,000 build errors in it, and then when I opened up, closed that down completely, closed that workspace, then opened up the workspace for the second file, which was generated from scratch, clean, it almost seems too good to be true. There's build time errors here of 18 errors. So I'm going to dig through these errors, references to specific files that do not exist. There's still references to, for instance, the final build failure. If I filter these by just fatal errors, it'll show me the link error at the very bottom, and that one is a reference to a file that is in, let's see if I can hover over it and have the error pop up. These errors are still references to files that are deeper in the file system. So I have to identify those specific files and fix them, and then we'll see where I end up. Now I've got a corrupted version that works.
and a reconstructed version that doesn't work. And I'm going through each file that has changed and copying the source code from the version that works to the version that doesn't work. Trying to get the rebuilt, uncorrupted version working. Problem would be the corrupted version always crashes in debugger. Before I can get into debug mode. And the rebuilt version just crashes when I run it. So I get a stack trace. So I have to manually go through the files, figure out which files have been updated right before the crash, right before it was corrupted by xCode, and copy each file from the corrupted version to the one I'm rebuilding. The app, the corrupted version keeps crashing in debug mode, so I'm going through all the recorded breakpoints that I've recorded over the years and deleting them from the corrupted version. And then I'll just reestablish new breakpoints. Try to get this app working, the corrupted version, in debug mode. So I can compare the uncorrupted version I'm rebuilding in debug mode with the corrupted version and figure out which source code change I made that fixed the issue I'm seeing. Okay, so now I have no breakpoints. Now I'm going to add a breakpoint in the module where it's crashing, and then trace the app through. And try to figure out the difference between the corrupted version that works and the uncorrupted version that doesn't, that crashes at this one breakpoint or this one area of the app. Okay, I see a problem here. I was just glancing around in the app and I noticed over here that these target memberships were not checked, and this is kind of a key point. I think it's really a defect in xCode, but when you're adding a new file, like you're doing, suppose you're here, you go into this directory, and I'm going to add a file to the project. project organizer, you look for a file that you're going to add, and let's say I want to add this file. It's not really visible to you. Your temptation would be just to click on the add button, but if you have schemas with your project, that's not going to work for you. What you need to do is you have to click on options here. You open up options, and I recommend choosing this option to copy the files if needed, because that'll put all your files into your local directory, and that way if you're making backup copies of your whole project to protect yourself from corruption, you always have all the files in that file system. The risk is there's a absolute path to a file system somewhere outside your project, and when you clean up from old projects and you delete the old project, you're actually deleting source code because there's a absolute path reference to a file outside the file system. So that's happened to me before, and I've had to go to Time Machine to go find a file that I have since deleted by accident because I was just cleaning up my hard drive, and it shouldn't have been a reference in my project to a file outside the project. So this checkbox always takes care of that, copies the files into your project. The other part here is really the key, is you have to check all these boxes, one for every single scheme that you have. And you would think that after you do this one time and you add a file to your project, that it would save those settings, and then they would always be on the next file, they would still be saved. But no, these checkboxes have to be checked every time you add files to the project. So it doesn't save defaults or your last behavior or your last checkboxes. So it's easy to forget that, and that's exactly what I did. So I inserted this file into the project, and I didn't check all those boxes. So consequently, it was only checked for the current scheme that I had open at the time I added the file and I was debugging it. So this fix is to go over here, click on the file, and then go into target membership, and then to check each one of these boxes. And after I do this, then Interface Builder should be able to see this file, and it should build successfully. Or it'll give me the next error that I have from the corruption. And you have to do this for every single file. So I'm probably going to have to go through the whole file system and go look at every single file that I've added and individually check the targets and make sure they're all checked for every one. So it's re-indexing. When it's indexing, it's kind of doing a build, so you really can't interrupt it at that point. Okay, product, clean. You gotta wait for the clean to finish because the clean's a build process. Okay, once it succeeds, then we'll do a build. Actually, I could just do a run directly on the device. I've got it attached. Happy Memorial Day to anybody out there. It built and installed previously successfully, so there's no guarantee that this is going to work. The only way to capture these you have the source code, you have it as part of your project, but it's not assigned to all your schemes. The only way to catch those defects would be through testing. So I think my next step is going to be to build a bunch of automated tests around these apps to make sure that I hit all the files and that all the files are available in each app, and there's no further corruption to this project. Okay, app is launching. It's launching on my device. I'm just going to go through a quick sequence of tests to the point of failure, where it failed previously. Gotta wait for it to finish installing. Okay, it should start running any second now. Okay, hit the plus button. Alright, this is where it crashed last time, so let's go next, 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 and this is where it crashes. Okay, it found the file, and I think we're past this. Okay, so let's hit the play button. Let me just do a quick add of a file here. Project named, added successfully. Okay, that test is complete. Alright, I think we might have a functioning app. I'm going to have to go through and obviously do a lot more regression testing and make sure this app is fully functional, and see if I'm ready to continue working with this after I do backups, of course, and maybe make a copy of it and do everything I can to protect myself from xCode.